Hi all. Today we are going to begin with one of the important chapters in your subject business law in CA Foundation, that is the Sale of Goods Act 1930. Before that, we have seen Indian Contract Act 1872. Okay, and we have also seen the we have also seen Indian Partnership Act 1932. And today what we will be seeing, that is in short is called as SOGA. Okay. So Indian Contract Act 1872, Indian Partnership Act 1932 and SOGA 1930. Now question may arise, sir, whether before IPA, that is Indian Partnership Act, was there no partnership form of business? Now next, one more question is whether there were no sale transactions before SOGA? No, they were there. But remember, these two were included in the Indian Contract Act. Later on, understanding the relevance of these transactions separately, so they came up with acts specifically meant for these dealings. That's why we are seeing two acts, that is IPA and SOGA. Okay, so in that we will be discussing about SOGA today. Okay, so what we will be learning, very scope, to what extent this act is, then definition of certain terms, because you know that here the terms differ from subject to subject, act to act. So we need to learn what are the meaning of meaning of particular terms in relation to this act. Then meaning of contract of sale, distinction of sale from other similar contracts, like there is hire purchase, there is installment system, right? Like that. Formalities of contract of sale, subject matter, and ascertainment of price. You know that whenever we coin the term sale, with that the price will also be there. Now what all we will be learning, we call it as, this is the bird's eye view of what we will be learning. Okay, so now first is we will be learning agreement, who is buyer, who is seller, right? The agreement again remains same. If you remember ICA, Indian Contract Act. Okay, now contract of sale, in that we will be learning transfer of property, immediate transfer and yet to be transferred. We call it as sale and agreement to sell. If your parents are involved in any land dealing, that if they have purchased farmland or plots, then you can ask them, they understand very well what is agreement to sell and sale. Okay, now we will be learning about goods, how many types of goods are there, right? We will be learning that also. And remember, whatever I'm speaking, I'm only speaking in limitation to the chapter 1 of Sale of Goods Act. Then we will be learning about price in detail. Now as I said, again I will come to the same point, that is the Sale of Goods Act 1930 deals with the laws relating to the sale of goods in India. Remember, we are not bothered about what is outside, we are only bothered about what is in India. Okay, so now next is, okay, then next comes, just a minute, let me select the highlighter. Okay, after that, this act is mainly based on English Sale of Goods Act. Remember, this is a quite common thing in India, that our laws are adopted from English acts. Okay, before the Sale of Goods Act 1930, all the provisions relating to Sale of Goods Act was covered under the chapter 6 of the Indian Contract Act. Remember, chapter 6 of the Indian Contract Act. Chapter 7. There are now totally 9 units. Maybe earlier it was different. A strong need was felt to have independent Sale of Goods Act, and consequently a new act called the SOGA 1930 was passed, and the act came into force from 1st July 1930, which extends to whole of India. Because earlier, Earlier there was a provision that whole of India except J and K, but now it is not there. Okay, next. The sale of goods is one of the specific forms of the contract. Specific forms of contract recognized and regulated by law in India. Sale is a typical bargain. आप बताओ bargain क्यों ना होता है? Typical bargain between the buyer and seller. किसके बीच में होता है? Buyer and seller. The Sale of Goods Act 1930 allows the parties to modify the provisions of the law by express stipulations. That means you can change the provisions by making it express in your agreement. That means आपको लिखना है clearly क्या क्या करने वाले हो. However, in some cases this freedom is severely restricted. Right? That means you have this independency in some cases, and in other cases you don't have. We will discuss that in later, which are restricted. The Sale of Goods Act 1930 is an act to define and amend the law relating to sale of goods. Very simple. There is nothing new regarding this. Then, scope of the act. The provisions of the Act are applicable to contracts related to the sale of goods, which means movable properties. Try to understand. We are speaking only about movable properties, and immovable properties are not covered under Sale of Goods Act, because here goods stands for movable property. The Act is not applicable to sale of immovable properties. It is not applicable to sale of immovable properties like land, fields, shop or house, etc. For immovable property, which act will be applicable? Transfer of Property Act 1882. Okay, so now what we need to understand now is applicable. The Sale of Goods Act 1930 deals only with the movable property. The general provisions of Indian Contract Act 1872 apply to contract of sale of goods. Sale of goods, as far as they are not inconsistent with the express provisions of the Sale of Goods Act. Now let me make you understand this. What is this? See, all general things like what is promise, what is agreement, what is contract, right? So whatever is there in ICA is equal to SOGA unless these two contradict. Unless these two contradict. If anything specific is better or is rightly given in the SOGA, then SOGA will be upheld. Okay, that you need to remember. Next, the expression used but not defined in the Sale of Goods Act 1930 and defined in the Indian Contract 1872 have the meanings assigned to them in that act. So now what is meant by, for example, if there is a matter called A, which has not been covered under SOGA, SOGA is silent about it, but Indian Contract Act speaks about it, then remember we need to consider what is there in the ICA, because there is no information available in the SOGA. The SOGA has no provision for that. Then which provision will be applicable? What is there in the ICA, because ICA is the parent law. Okay, then now coming to the definitions. The Sale of Goods Act 1930, the Sale of Goods Act 1930 defines the term which have been frequently used in the act, which are as follows. Now what are those? Now buyer and seller. See, you need to remember the things, two things here. It involves the present, it involves the future. What is meant by that? The one who is buying or agreed to buy. Agreed to buy is a future course of action. So both are covered under the term buyer and seller. The one who has agreed to buy or bought or agreed to buy. the one who has sold or agreed to sell. Both are covered. Okay, so that is what it speaks about. It speaks about the, see, buyer and seller means a person who buys or agrees to buy the goods. Section 2 subsection 1. See, I said buy the goods or agrees to buy the goods. Okay. Seller means a person who sells or agrees to sell the goods. Okay, 2 subsection 13. The two terms buyer and seller are complementary because अरे भाई ये वाला buyer है और ये वाला seller है, तो ये एक दूसरे के बिना एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं कर सकते, because there can't be a seller without buyer and there can't be a buyer without seller. Very simple. Both the terms are however used in a sense wider than in their common meaning. अरे इतना बोल दिया कि the buyer is the one who buys, इतना ही definition हमने बोल दिया. It's a very small definition, but the usage is much broader than this. Not only the person who buys the goods, but also the one who agrees to buy is a buyer. Similarly, in case of seller. Now, question arises, what are goods? Goods means any kind of movable property. What is meant by goods? Any kind of movable property. Okay. Now, that means we can easily strike out that immovable properties are not part of it. Other than actionable claims, there is a later on discussion about what is actionable claim, and money. Money is also not included because money cannot be called as goods. And includes, what all it includes? It includes stocks, it includes shares, growing crops, grass, things attached to or forming part of the land. Try to understand. Things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be separated or severed from the land before the sale or under the contract of sale. Now question arises, sir, what is this? Sir, these things all we have understood. We know what is stocks, we know what is shares. Share का बंडल ही होता है stock. Growing crops we know. Grass, अरे भाई हम जमीन के आदमी हैं, इतना हम समझ सकते हैं. Things attached to or forming part of the land, this is now, which are agreed to be severed or separated from the land before the sale or under the contract of sale. Now, let me tell you what it exactly means. Let me first. Now, assume that you have grown paddy in your field. What you have grown? Paddy. Now, if you sell that paddy after harvesting, then what you are doing, you are separating it from the land. It is called as goods. If you have not separated and sold the entire land to someone without separating it, then it will not be called as goods because it comes under the movable property and it comes under transfer of property, and SOGA will not come into picture. Hope you are clear. Now, next comes actionable claim. See which section defines it? 12 subsection 7. Remember this. Next, actionable claims are claims which can be enforced only by an action or suit. Example, a debt. Example, a debt. What you need to understand is which can be enforced only by an action or suit. Okay. Action or suit. Legally आप जा रहे हो. Example, a debt is not a movable property or goods. Even when fixed deposit receipts are considered as goods under 176 of the Indian Contract Act, read with section 2 subsection 7 of this act. Debt comes under actional claim and it is not part of goods. That is what you need to understand. Okay. Now, this FDR is considered by reading it with these two sections. Okay. Now, goods include both tangible goods and intangible goods. Yes, it includes tangible like goodwill, copyright, patents, trademark, etc. Stock. This is an exhaustive definition of goods. This is a very exhaustive definition of goods. It includes everything. Kindly go through this, okay? Electricity, a decree of court, yes. Now, next is, let us see what is covered in a tabular way, or in a diagram. In a diagram we can understand all these things. Now, first, goods, it means every kind of movable property. Yes, we know very well. Actionable claims and money in circulation are not goods. It includes stocks and shares, growing crops, grass, things attached to or forming part of land, and agreed to be severed before sale. Now, what next comes is goods. Goods are of three types. One is existing, future, two is future, third is contingent goods. Let me make you clear what they are. Existing goods at the time of contract of sale. For example, I am holding pen now in my hand. If I agree to sell you now this pen for rupees 2000, then it becomes existing good, because at the time of contract of sale this good is with me, it is present there. Now second comes, assume that when I now if I say, if I contract with you saying that today you deposit 2000 rupees in my account and I will be sending you notes after I prepare them, then it becomes future goods, because on the day of sale the goods are not with you. Next is contingent goods. Now what are contingent goods? I will tell you. These are the goods. Now hope you remember contingent contracts which we studied in the Indian Contract Act. What it says is contingent goods. Now let us not speak about it's similar to that. If I say that I will pay rupees, I will supply goods to Mr. A. If B supplies it to me, then it is called as contingent goods, because I supply to them or not, A or not is dependent on B supplying it to me. So that's why they are called as contingent goods. And then comes specific, ascertained and unascertained. Very simple concept. You can go with examples and all, but I will make you understand it very easily. What is specific goods? When I say you that I need Samsung Galaxy Ultra S24, when I say this, I'm being specific about what I want. Everything is very clear, and of gray color, blue color, whatever is there, that one. Okay, or when I point to some goods and say that I want that becomes specific good. Okay, and then comes ascertained and unascertained. For example, assume that I have 20 leather balls with me. How many leather balls are with me? 20 leather balls are with me. Now if A comes to my shop and he says that, sir, give me 2 leather balls. Give me 2 leather balls. See, these all are the goods which are with me. Or you can say, these all are unascertained goods. Okay. Out of this, if A comes and asks me for 2 leather balls, when I give him 2 leather balls out of this, they become ascertained goods and remaining 18 will be unascertained goods. Try to understand this. That's why you can see ascertained are those goods which are identified in accordance with the agreement. That means we know that leather balls, he has said. After the contract of sale is made, this term is not defined in the act. Nowhere it is defined. Okay. From judicial interpretation, we have come to know what is ascertained and what is unascertained. In actual practice, The term ascertained goods is used in the same sense as specific goods. Okay. When out of a lot or out of a large quantity of unascertained goods, the number of quantity contracted for is identified, and such identified goods are called as ascertained goods. Hope you are clear with it. Ascertained goods and unascertained goods. There are examples in the module. You can go with them because they are very easy. I can't spend time over that. Now, next comes future goods. Future goods means to be manufactured or produced or acquired, that's what I said, by the seller after making the contract of sale. This remember, say 2 subsection 6. Okay. Then next comes contingent goods. As I already said, the acquisition of goods which depends upon an uncertain contingency, uncertain event, are called contingent goods. For example, A agrees to sell to B a Picasso painting provided he is able to purchase it from the present owner. If I am able to purchase or if I am able to acquire, I will be selling it to you. This is contract of sale for contingent goods. Okay. Now, contingent goods also operates as agreement to sell, because first you need to have an agreement and not a sale, so far as the question of passing of property to the buyer is concerned, because it will not transfer immediately. It will transfer only on the happening of that particular event. In other words, like the future goods, in the case of contingent goods also, the property does not pass immediately. Very beautiful point. How this can be correlated. In future goods, what happens? The goods will be supplied later. The possession will not be transferred to them immediately. In the same way, in the contingent goods, the possession will not be transferred immediately, because the transfer of possession depends on the other person's action. Okay, so now in the next class we will look at other part of this continued part of this act, that is delivery. For today it is enough. Okay, so kindly let me know how this class, if you find it useful, kindly like and subscribe to my channel.